5 years ahead of time, you know, let's go into the future. What would you say is your most fondest memory about working on this film?
It's funny that you should ask that, because the question that Claire asked the other actors on stage 2 nights ago was, how do you, now that some time has passed, how do you feel about watching the film again? And I feel like we've just now gotten to that point where we feel nostalgic about it. When we were done shooting, we were exhausted. We didn't want to look at the film. We didn't want to look at each other. And now, you know, it's been over a year, and a lot of the people on the cast and crew we haven't seen since we wrapped shooting. So it was very kind of an emotional reunion the other night. So I would say just what I feel fondest about is just the time I spent with this particular group of people. And in particular the actors, because as you know, this is a very actor-driven film. And so the rehearsal process was absolutely crucial. This is a film that's going to live or die by the performances. And that was where, you know, it was during rehearsal that the actors really found the characters. And so just seeing these folks again was great. And I just you know, was very lucky to have a great cast. And Claire was instrumental in that because she has a theater background, and she was the casting director in addition to being the producer.
And you're leading into my next question. Can you talk about like what went into choosing these 4 people, Adam, Nina, you know, Chelsea, and Kevin? You know, how do you go about making sure that these 4 people are playing these specific characters?
Well,
I'm going to let you take it.
Well, as Mike said, my background is in theater. So I had a little bit of casting in my short films, in my master's program. I enjoy casting, so I set a really wide net, was extremely honest about what we were giving people, and tried to see, just like, pick out the theater things that I recognized, what I thought like, okay, this person has done something a little bit more challenging than some of these other people. And then we just had a ridiculous amount of auditions. Like, we had a lot of auditions, and we had people come in, and then we had our callbacks. We had people read against each other, so we really figured out that chemistry. We had a very intense audition process for such a short film.
And the chemistry was crucial because obviously it's a film about relationships, but it wasn't just about, you know, I mean, it's 2 heterosexual couples. It wasn't just the male-female chemistry. It was also the Paul-Claudio chemistry and the, you know, the Julie-Tess chemistry as well.
And I think one of our quickest casting decisions was Adam Overberg as Claudio.
He got it right.
He just read the scene so much better than anybody else. And so then we brought people in and we're like, okay, who fits with Adam? And how does this work? We had a ton of Julies to pick from. And Kevin was also was kind of as soon as he came in, was kind of a
and how do you go about casting Tess, because obviously she's like asked to do something pretty seriously to her physical appearance.
Casting Tess involved saying in the breakdown, this person needs to shave their head on camera, but we'll buy you new headshots. That was pretty much our incentive.
Which ended up being a sizable chunk of the budget.
It was, I mean, it wasn't a large budget. People didn't get a lot of money, but I really felt like if we were going to ask an actress to do that, we had to give her something in return. Like that would have been a big expense for her anyways. She needed.
Yeah, it's a pretty daring move.
And Chelsea David, the actress, initially didn't want to do it. She came in to read for Julie. That was who she wanted to read for. And we asked her to read for Tess, and we loved what she did. And I think we had a questionnaire that they filled out, and it said, "Are you willing to shave your head?" And I think she left it blank. I think she just didn't. She didn't circle yes or no. So.
Well, I brought Chelsea in because I'd worked with her. We worked up at the Apollo as ushers together.
Okay, awesome.
So it was kind of like I know you act, I know you're wonderful to just work with in general. Come in and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
And especially when she was so good for Tess, and Mike's like, I want for Tess. I'm like, I have to talk my friend into shaving her head.
How dare you?
But actually, it wasn't. I don't think it was as difficult as I thought it was
No,
going to be.
she really warmed up to the idea.
Yeah,
she was.
Yeah. Well, and then, so for these characters and talking about like the writing process, like how much of you would you say is in these characters? I mean, is this sort of a story that's close to you, or is it sort of something that maybe it's a little bit combination of both?
I told another interviewer recently that it's very personal, but it's not autobiographical.
Okay.
If that distinction
that
makes sense.
It does make sense.
And I think I put myself into all of the characters equally, male and female.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the Tess shaving your head thing, I've never told this to anybody. I did that once. I shaved my head after someone broke up with me.
Okay.
When I was 17 years old, and because I knew we weren't getting back together, and to me it was sort of like, okay, here's a new chapter.
Starting new. Yeah.
So I think there's kind of a tendency where people who don't know me see the film and they kind of assume that I'm one of the male characters, but I'm all of them.
Yeah.
But then also, you know, there are aspects of the characters that I don't like. Too,
right.
You know, where I'm kind of satirizing them in a way, like. The character Paul is very much a Luddite, you know, and I don't think it's cool to be like that. You know, how he says, "I don't own a computer," you know, I think that's pretentious.
Right.
So, you know, it's not just, you know, oftentimes when you see these kind of no-budget mumblecore type films, you think, oh, it's just somebody and their friends making a film about themselves.
Right.
That's not what we were doing here.
Yeah. And can you talk about like for your decision to shoot it in black and white? I mean, it's, you know, maybe it's budget reasons, but talk about like using that style. I mean, I know
budget had nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
It's not cheaper to shoot
digital, so it really didn't make.
If it was
difference.
film stock, maybe. But I just love black and white. I think it looks beautiful.
Yeah.
And I teach film history, so I actually probably spend more time watching black and white films.
Yeah.
And I just think that the aesthetic properties of it are very beautiful. And I think a lot of my students who aren't used to watching it, they look at black and white as being somehow incomplete.
Yeah.
You know, they think of it as the absence of color.
Right.
They're like, oh, something's missing, like something's been drained out of it. Whereas in reality, it's just a different aesthetic. It's a style choice.
Yeah, I'm a big believer of that too. I mean, I think it's also a fragile decision to make too in a lot of ways, because I think like the more people do it, the more it could lose its value. I see movies like Nebraska.
Well, it's coming back.
Yeah, where I love it and I love to see it.
Yeah.
And then a part of me in the back of my head is like, oh, don't do it too much, because like you can hear it, it looks great.
Yeah.
I think it like does create a phenomenal sort of just an ambiance when they're sitting around the table.
Right, I agree, and I think you know, in general, I think the adjective I use to describe this film the most is probably minimalist. You know, it's just everything is very simple.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, there's a lot of long takes. The average shot length is 20 seconds, which is pretty long. I mean, it's actually a slow-paced film in terms of if you just count how long the shots last.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's slow in terms of the overall rhythm.
No.
And you know, so I think the black and white supports that.
Yeah.
It's four characters. Everything is very just basic.
Right.
But what's interesting to me about black and white coming back, and I'm speaking now as more of a film studies instructor,
right.
film critic, is it's the digital post-production that has made black and white come back. Because it's so easy to do. You shoot in color, you just, with a click of a mouse, you just change it. And so I think people are kind of, like you said, getting used to watching it again.
Yeah.
There was that Justin Timberlake video, Suit and Tie.
Right.
Which David Fincher.
The artist.
The artist.
And
it's like every year.
Nebraska. You see.
I think for this film, I had suggested, I was like, why don't we just shoot in color? We can always change it later. He's like, no, we're shooting in black and white. There's no shooting in color.
A lot of people said, why don't you shoot in color and then you can change it in post? And I said, you know, back in the 50s, they didn't shoot on color film stock and then process it in black and white, and they could have.
Yeah.
You know, it's like you make a choice and you commit.
Right.
But I'd also like to point out, you know, we shot all of the auditions in black and white, so
that's awesome.
We knew what it was going to look like. We did.